use the raise your hand feature within Teams, and a member of the support staff will queue you up and we'll get your question asked and answered, hopefully. So let's go ahead and begin. First of all, good afternoon. My name is Jeff Oskin. I am going to be leading our webinar here this afternoon. I am a strategy and leadership coach at Assured Strategy. I've spent the last 33 years of my career in the technology and the leadership circles. I've been the president of a publicly traded software company. I founded my own technology company that I started from scratch, grew, merged, and ultimately sold a couple of years back. I am a past Vistage Chair and a current chair of Sage Advisors, which is a peer advisory forum. And I've been doing so for the last 12 or 13 years. And for the purposes of this material, I am at what is known as a certified AI expert, certified by the Blockchain Council, which is an independent arbiter of technology certifications, and is certification I obtained just about 2 years ago in 2023. From our presentation today, there are several key takeaways that I hope you all leave with. First and foremost is information, is knowledge. I want to equip you with a little bit of knowledge because I believe ultimately knowledge is power. And we're going to talk a little bit about the future of AI and more specifically its applicability to business. The second is I want you to understand that I am an advocate of technology to deliver a business benefit and not an advocate of technology for the sake of technology. So I please encourage you to think about ways to leverage the tools and the techniques that I will be going over with you today to deliver a tangible business benefit for your organizations. And then finally, AI is not about cutting costs, but rather it is about finding ways to monetize its capabilities to deliver incremental revenue and profit for your businesses. Don't get me wrong, there will be cost savings that come about from AI, but that is going to be in the long run the minority or the very small fraction of the actual dollars that are realized from AI. The significant bulk of the revenue or dollars associated with AI is going to come from revenue streams that don't exist today. And so as I deliver this, and as you think about applying AI in your respective organizations, I'd encourage you to think about how you can monetize AI in a way that you're currently not doing today to deliver incremental value to your business. We're going to cover a number of different areas today. So I'm going to take you on a journey. We'll start with an overview and a background. I don't want to assume anybody knows anything about AI, so we're going to do a little bit of a level set. We'll then talk about generative AI and a few different elements of generative AI. We'll talk a little bit about machine learning and kind of what it's conceptually all about. We'll go over some industry trends. There's a lot of jargon and news and buzz out there in the industry, and I want to kind of help you understand and put in context a little bit about what's going on. And then we'll talk about some specific applications that you might find useful that you could begin using today if you so desired, that might help deliver some value to your respective organizations. And then we'll finally wrap up with any Q&A that has not arisen during the course of the material, but then also wrap up and talk about what to do next. So let's go ahead and dive in. So let's first start with what is artificial intelligence? AI is fundamentally about making the devices that you're currently viewing this webinar on think and act like us as humans. It's about transforming our senses, our emotions into machines, computers, phones, tablets, etc., to, again, make them more human-like or more realistic in how they interact with their world. And AI is broken down into three core components. Machine learning. Machine learning is akin to your brain. You take in information, for example, perhaps you were told as a child or experienced yourself a hot stove, and that is now in your memory, and you know that when a stove is on or appears hot, not to touch it. You've learned from experience, whether it's firsthand experience or something somebody has told you. Machine learning is exactly the same concept. It's taking information and knowing that when that stove is on, not to touch it. It's about predicting the future and about helping understand potential outcomes based on historical events and patterns and data, and being able to project the future. And we'll talk a little bit more about machine learning in a bit. Generative AI is where all the buzz is in the industry right now. Whenever OpenAI came into the fold a couple of years back, the whole world got introduced to AI, even though generative AI has actually been around since the 50s. The first AI chatbot was built in the late 50s and has evolved significantly into the tools that we have at our disposal today. Generative AI is fundamentally about speech and words, being able to understand and interpret the spoken word or the written word and to do something with it. So to take an input, if you've used ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of the other models that are out there, you're either typing, speaking, and it's taking that information and returning back information to you. That is what is known as generative AI. And then last is computer vision. Computer vision is akin to your eyeballs. It is the ability to see and recognize patterns and information. Think about when you go to the airport or your car goes through a toll booth or what have you. You're recognizing and reading some information. If it's a car going through a toll booth, you're looking at a license plate or you're looking at a transponder and you're viewing that information, you're processing it in real time and making some decisions about it. When you go through the airport, the security line, you're taking facial recognition and they're scanning a database and processing that in real time to see if there's any matches for nefarious characters. That's an example of computer vision. Put all of these together simultaneously, and that ultimately is what artificial intelligence is all about. Put together a very brief sample of how AI could be deployed in a sample technology company. This is, again, technology. It could be any other type of company. So from a generative AI standpoint, the things in orange, coding and development. So building software could be done using generative AI. Customer experience, outreach, personalization, tremendous way to leverage AI to personalize in mass information to your customers. Generating marketing content, using AI voice and chatbots, and I'll show you some of those a little bit later today, to interact with the external world without human involvement, generative AI based. We then have computer vision. Computer vision has a role in process automation. For example, if you have invoices that are being manually transposed into a financial system, those could be automatically scanned and leveraging some AI capabilities to essentially replace what a human being is doing and transposing that data and getting it into a system. And then last, you have machine learning. So machine learning could be doing things along with predictive analytics, fraud anomaly detection. If I'm a technology company in the credit card space, for example, understanding fraud and anomaly patterns to predict potential fraud or security implications. Constituent engagement, understanding the patterns of the constituents I interact with, my partners, my customers, my employees, and understanding how they're interacting with me and determining patterns so that I can predict, are they happy? Are they sad? Are they frustrated? And be able to do something about it. That's an example of machine learning. So again, simplistic technology company, a variety of different ways to deploy the core elements of AI within a particular organization. I want to talk a little bit about the models themselves and kind of how they're built, because this is a fundamental misnomer about AI and kind of how it is, how it is architected today. And the thing people don't necessarily realize is that there are human beings that are underlying all of these models in some way, shape, or form. And just as you and I and everybody else that might be viewing this webinar, we come with our own set of experiences, our own biases, our own perspectives on the world. It doesn't mean any of us is right or doesn't mean any of us is wrong. It just means we have perspectives that are unique to our own situation. Well, when you understand how AI models are built, you can begin to understand how those biases or perspectives can be embedded into the model and drive a model a certain way. And so, for example, let's take building any sort of AI model, generative AI model. It typically starts with a hypothesis. Somebody says, I want to do A, B, and C with a particular model. And so they take a set of training data, they build an algorithm that interprets that data to produce the quote unquote right result in their mind. And they continue to refine that algorithm until, again, that training data yields consistently the result that they deem right or correct. And they release that then as a model. When released, then the masses, you and I and everybody else, get access to that. And we begin inputting data far beyond the training set of data and begin using that model. And that model is making predictions based upon a new set of data, and it is making predictions that the model, quote unquote, deems to be right. And it is up then to people to evaluate, is that right? My whole point behind this is that there are rooms and rooms and rooms full of people that are training these models, and in turn, their biases are naturally finding their way into the model. It's not intentional, but it just happens. And I want to show you an example of what that means. I took my resume, my exact resume, and I made an exact copy of it. And I took and went to one of these models and I asked for an African name, something that would come out of Africa. And it gave me a name. And I took and saved my resume and updated all the references to my name with the name that it gave me. And then I took each of those two resumes and I uploaded them into Claude. And let me show you what that looks like. And you should be seeing this model now. And this model, again, I took these two resumes, my resume and a resume from an individual named Quasi. And again, my exact resume. I uploaded Quasi's first and mine second so that there wouldn't be any order bias. And I asked it a simple question of which candidate would seem to make a better CEO for a Memphis-based startup. And based upon the information provided in the resumes, it says both candidates have a strong background. However, Jeff Oskin appears to be a better fit, and it gave me a series of reasons why. But more interestingly, it said while Quasi has an impressive qualification, his appears to be unidentifiable to Jeff's, which raises questions about its authenticity, meaning that it thought that mine was the authentic one and Quasi's was the imposter versus the other way around. And the only reason it could do that is because an inherent bias embedded in the model. Now, granted, this example is probably 2 or 3 months old, but it illustrates the notion of biases into the model. Why do I share this? I share it so that you are aware that, again, people, at the end of the day, are training these models, and you need to train and understand and use the models understanding that there's bias and find the ones that best match with your particular needs and best match with your own interpretation of quote unquote what is right. All right. With that background behind us, let's talk a little bit about some of the tools that exist out there in the world. And we're going to start with generative AI. And we'll go on this journey here together, but let's start with generative AI. Within the world of generative AI, there are three core components. There is the public generative AI, which is, again, where all of the buzz is. This is where the ChatGPT and the Claude and the Gemini and the Meta and the Grok all live. There then are private AI chatbots, and I'll show you an example of one that I've built. And then there are AI voice bots that I'll show you a quick example of what one of those look like. All of these follow a similar model. Somebody is either typing or speaking text and then getting back typed or spoken word. All right, so let's start with public generative AI. Before we launch into any of the models, it is critically important that you understand how to interact with them. And that means of interacting is known as prompt engineering. Prompt engineering, when done correctly, is how to best get out accurate information from any of these tools that you might use. And the model that I would encourage you to follow is something called the role goal format structure. The role. So you define what is the model supposed to be. For example, you're a business coaching expert. Your goal. What is it you want the model to do for you? Your goal is to prepare a complete marketing plan for a coaching client in the residential HVAC space. Format. How do you want your information produced? Do you want it in a bullet list? Do you want it in paragraph form? Do you want it in a Word document? Do you want it in an Excel file? What format do you want the output to come in? If you do this correctly and specify the role, the goal, and the format, the output and the results you get will be far more accurate and far greater and be much more useful to you than if you just randomly interact with the engines. Further, there are a variety of other tips that I would encourage you to think about using industry specific language, any constraints or limitations. If you have examples, attaching examples, if you have an example output or example document, etc. If you have a complex problem, break it into smaller bite-sized pieces. Tell the model you're doing that. Tell it that you're a business coaching expert. I have a complex problem that I'm going to break into multiple pieces. Part one is your goal is to, whatever that might be. So break the complex problems down into bite-sized pieces. And again, tell the model you're doing that. And then finally, request citations or references, right? Understand where it got its data. Some of the models are better at this than others. I'm going to show you that in just a second. But you can tell the model to not just give me results in a bullet list, but you can also say include citations and references in web, via web links or whatever, so that you know where the information came from, so you can go verify the results if you so desired. Let's talk a little bit about how to use public generative AI. I'm going to show you some examples. Again, ChatGPT is the most commonly used, so I'm not going to right now show that one. I'm going to show some of the other ones that are not necessarily as widely used. I'm going to show you both Gemini and Grok. All of these models that you see on the screen here are driven by something called chatbot technology, which is just a fancy way of saying you provide a question or a command and it responds. That question or command can be typed, it can be spoken, it can be a picture, and you're asking for something in response as a result. It is the foundational technology used in most AI applications today. And one kind of factoid that people are not necessarily aware of is most of the models have date limitations associated with them. They're valid through April of this year, or others like X have no date limitations because they're largely using Twitter-based data as its sources of data, which is constantly being refreshed. So let's take a look at some of these. And what I'm going to do is, here is the prompt that I'm going to put in. I'm going to say, you are a leadership and team expert, train the 5 dysfunctions of team. What suggestions would you provide me to build an optimal leadership team in the company? Provide your responses in bullet form. So let's first go to Gemini. And let me just grab something here so I can show you what this looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in my prompt here. And I'll go ahead and ask it the question. Sorry, that is my fault. So this is Gemini. And you see, again, this is my prompt. You're a leadership team, try to 5 dysfunctions, what suggestions? And it's given me a variety of suggestions. If I come back and I want to do the same thing in Grok, I open up Grok. And I am going to ask it the same thing. And you'll see that it's going to give me its version of its response. And it's going to look a little bit different. All right. And you see it talks about each of the 5 dysfunctions. And if you've read the book, you understand what each of these mean. Again, 2 different tools, 2 different approaches, asking it the same question and get slightly different results. That is public generative AI. AI chatbots are very similar, with the primary difference that public generative chatbots are just that, they are public. I would highly discourage putting sensitive data, company data, into public chatbots because they are in the public domain. Granted, it could be difficult to find that data, but nonetheless, they are now out there in the public domain. AI chatbots, by contrast, are done inside the four walls of an organization, and they are, as a result, private and not accessible to the outside public. And they can be trained on any of your internal data: SharePoint repository, Google Drive, spreadsheets, databases, manuals, pamphlets, whatever. And they allow, without a whole lot of effort, employees, constituents, customers, partners, et cetera, to interact in a very unstructured way. So you don't have to know all of the questions somebody might ask. You simply are providing content, and the users are at free will to ask whatever questions. And as long as the answer is somewhere in that content, the chatbot will be able to figure it out and produce a result. So let me show you what one looks like. Built a simple little chatbot for Assured Strategy. And I'm going to ask it, I've uploaded Scaling Up, the book, into the chatbot in a PDF form. And I'm going to ask it a very simple set of questions. So let's go and show you what that looks like. Again, this is private, not publicly accessible. And if I come in here and I put my question in here, that is, what is a one-page strategic plan? Again, from the book Scaling Up, you will see that this is going to come off, and it is going to go and research that book, and it's going to provide a summary that comes from the content that was loaded into it. There is no limitation on the amount or volume of content you build for these internal AI chatbots. They're incredibly useful for accessing likely the volumes of data and information that exist inside of any organization: customer data, contract data, employee data, manuals, health insurance, all kinds of crazy things that can be leveraged to access it in a very easy manner using AI chatbots in a private setting. Ask it a little bit different question: the difference between responsibility, accountability, and authority. And again, this is going to go off somewhere in that book. And in this case, this is going to be on one of the pages. I think it's page 87 or so of the book. And it's giving me the particular answers. This chatbot could be expanded to include the references. Where did it get it? What page number, et cetera. It just happens to be turned off at the moment for the purposes of this demo. Our next, again, foray into generative AI is something known as AI voice bots. AI voice bots use the same exact underlying technology as a chatbot, except the interaction with them is using voice. So instead of using typed word, as you just saw, these are using spoken word, and the interaction, the response back is in the spoken word. So I'm going to show you two different companies. I'll show you one of these two companies. Poly AI has an excellent conversational AI voice chatbot for lots of different purposes. Amazon's got a great one called Lex, powerful tool set. You could kind of build your own. There's lots of different ones out there. But let me show you an example of what one of these sound like. So this particular, these are just some samples. This one is for booking a table, a dinner reservation. So let me just
Cafe
play.
Bridge, Portsmouth. How can I help you today?
Synthetic voice.
Hi there. Can I book a table
Real
for
person
1:30
speaking.
this coming Sunday for 4 people?
Let me just have a look at what
Synthetic
space we
voice.
have. Okay. We
Again,
have a
synthetic
table on the
voice.
24th of July at 1:30 p.m. for 4 people. Is that all okay for you?
Yeah, that's great.
Human,
Great. Shall I go ahead and book that in for you?
synthetic.
Please do.
Can I have your full name, please?
Yep. My full name is Emily Schaefer.
Can you spell your last name for me?
Sure thing. It's SCHAEFFER, Schaefer.
Can we reach you on this number?
Yes, you can.
Perfect. I'm just waiting to see that go through, and that's done. Is there anything else that you need to let me know? Any allergies or other notes that I should make on your booking?
Yeah, someone in the group is celiac. Can you make a note of that, please?
We cater the dietary requirements, but all our food is prepared in the same kitchen. I'm just making a note on your booking now, but please remind someone from our team when you get here.
Yep, I can do that.
Is there anything else I can help you with?
I think that's everything. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
So again, that is an example of an AI voice chatbot. It was thrown a curveball with the dietary requirements of the individual. And again, there's no prescribed or kind of structured approach to this other than it knows that it is generally booking a table. But beyond that, it is very much free form in how it interacts with the backend data. So it has access to the reservation system. It has access to some policies and procedures manuals, potentially some FAQs, and it is sourcing that data in real time. And in this case, formulating a synthetic voice to interact with the human being at the other end of the phone. You will see more and more of these become more and more prevalent in organizations, and it will be extraordinarily difficult to determine if you're actually speaking as they mature and get better, that you're actually speaking to a human being versus synthetic AI generated voice. Okay, with that under our belts from a generative AI standpoint, let's jump into and talk a little bit about machine learning. So machine learning is all about understanding the future. And the way I like to describe this is machine learning. If you think about your car, the rear view mirror in your car is all about the past. It's looking at data and information that's already occurred in your organization and understanding that historical data. Machine learning is like the windshield in your car. It's leveraging that same organizational data, but it's leveraging it to predict what is going to come at me in the future. What does my future look like? It leverages some advanced AI algorithms. It requires the same centralized data store as BI and data and analytics. It is about predicting the future versus analytics is about the past. So again, machine learning is all about looking out that windshield of your vehicle. Here are some very simple machine learning applications that potentially could be used in an organization. And back to revenue generation, these types of machine learning applications could be sold as a premium service to their customers. So for example, fertilizer company on the right. Fertilizer company built a custom machine learning algorithm that took weather data, market demand, soil data, some drone data, some customer input, put all of that into a machine learning engine. And its output was the mixture of fertilizer and the amount to apply to a given field. And then what are the water irrigation recommendations for the farmer to optimize the yield of their crop? So that is an example of, again, a machine learning based application. And then this in its entirety can be sold as a premium service to that farmer that is interested in maximizing the yield of their crop rather than just simply selling them bags of fertilizer, as an example. Okay, let's talk next about industry trends. So industry trends obviously have been going on a long time, and we're kind of sitting here right now today, and you're probably hearing a lot about agentic AI. Agentic AI is about taking by and large, generative AI and allowing it to do and execute business processes, to make decisions and execute a business process. For example, in customer service, an agentic AI bot could interact with the customer who is requesting a refund or has an issue with a particular piece of merchandise, and it could interpret and make the decision that issuing the customer a refund is the most appropriate path. And it can automatically go into the various systems to execute the return and issue the refund so that the customer gets the money back without a human being actually ever being involved in the process of interacting with that customer. That's an example of agentic AI. All of this started obviously with the explosion of generative AI back several years ago and has been evolving since. Where things are going into the future, multimodal AI, edge AI are largely in the news right now. Multimodal AI is bringing multiple elements of AI. So think movies, right? Movies are both visual, but there's also spoken word, there's emotion, there's scene that's going on. AI today, today's AI models can't interpret all of that at once. Multimodal AI is about being able to interpret what's being said, what's happening on the screen, and being able to interpret and make decisions and execute tasks based upon that interpretation. So again, multimodal AI is bringing the various elements of AI that we've talked about previously, bringing them together to be able to use them simultaneously rather than individually. Edge AI is gaining a lot of traction right now. There's a lot of the wireless carriers you're seeing publish. You're seeing some of the AI companies talk about AI devices. And basically, it is about getting AI out onto tablets and smartphones and televisions and all kinds of things that are off of the core internet, core browser, core whatever, and onto and closer to the end user in their daily lives. Robotics and autonomy is certainly coming. And again, you'll see elements of this in the news, very much in its infancy, but definitely on the path that we'll be getting to in the next couple of years. Let's talk about some useful AI apps that, again, you may find applicable for your respective organizations. I'll talk about a couple of these. Browse AI. So Browse AI is a tool. Again, any of these you can begin using tomorrow. You can go sign up and create an account. Browse AI allows you to monitor any website, anything for any changes, any new info or content that's published. So imagine monitoring a competitor's website for press releases. Browse AI would allow you to set up an agent to monitor that website, and it will alert you anytime there's a change to the website. Anytime a new news article is published or something changes on that site, it can alert you to that. It can store that information in a repository to allow you to query and do other actions with it. Jasper, a great tool for creating marketing content. It is basically what they have done is they've taken an off-the-shelf generative AI tool, and they've gotten really, really smart about writing the prompts. So they've done a lot of prompt engineering work and packaged it as a solution for generating marketing content, press releases, blog posts, Twitter feeds, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, anything you can think of from a marketing content. They have done a very nice job of building that and allowing you without having to know how to write the prompts to get the type of content from a marketing standpoint out of it. AI note taking, there's lots of them out there. Some are better than others. Some have some good features, some don't. Definitely encourage you to think about various AI note taking tools that are out there. Try a few, find the one you like, and use it. They're great, great resources. Google has something called Notebook LM. If you haven't heard of it or haven't tried it, I would absolutely encourage you to do so. It's free. Just Google search Notebook LM. It has a mind-blowing podcast generator. You can literally upload a piece of content, anything you want, and it, with a press of a button, will generate an interactive podcast that you can publish to the world. Very, very cool piece of technology for analyzing all kinds of documents and information. Apollo IO, great for outbound sales automation. So it can set up um, autonomous agents to be able to execute sales playbooks. It can do intent searching. It can do a variety of different things to help with outbound sales. And then Synthesia is a synthetic video creation tool. You can create your own avatar, your own voice. You can use off-the-shelf ones. You can use celebrity ones to create phenomenal training videos, as an example, that simply allow you to make changes to those videos by going in to basically a Word document or a word processing document, changing the words and imaging the video, and it will leverage the new words that you have put into that editor without having to do anything else. Very, very slick piece of technology. Some HR related items. One I definitely want to talk about here is something called Juicebox. Juicebox, or People GPT as it's also known, is a phenomenal tool if you have ever been stuck finding a candidate for your business for a particular job. Juicebox allows you to find people that are not necessarily looking for jobs that match your criteria for what it is you're looking for. So these are people that, again, are not necessarily looking. They may be not in the job market, but allow you to identify good candidates. And what the tool allows you to do is it provides you access to their contact information. And from right within the tool, you can reach out on behalf of the organization and begin a conversation with the individual to see if they might be interested in a role within your particular company. Again, a pretty slick tool for accessing candidates that might be considered hard to find. There are a variety of other HR related. I won't get into all these here today, just in the interest of time, but definitely encourage you to take a look at them. Okay, I want to begin moving into wrap up and QA. And what I'd like to do is start by talking about risks. We've talked a little bit about some of the risks, but as with any new technology, there are risks. In this case, bias and fairness. So understanding your model and find the one that produces for you the most consistent results. What works for you might not work for somebody else, and vice versa. And that's okay. And that's to be expected because, again, understanding that these models fundamentally are trained by human beings and we all have biases that we impart on them. Finding one that most closely aligns with your value set, your organization's value set, is a worthwhile endeavor. Don't just pick the most popular one. Try a bunch of different ones and see which works best for you. Privacy and security. Be careful with public generative AI models, which we've already talked about. You're putting potentially sensitive data into the cloud, and that presents a risk of unintended data exposure. Private AI chatbots address that risk by limiting the exposure to your four walls. So definitely think about leveraging private AI chatbots. Accountability. You may have heard of the term hallucinations. This is where the various models make up information. So definitely test your deployment, tweak your settings, tweak your model as you need in order to ensure the results are as you expect. Include and ask for, if you're using public generative AI, ask for citations and verify those citations. Verify that they've accurately interpreted whatever it is they may have referenced in providing you the answer or information that it provided to you. So make sure you hold the model accountable. If it doesn't produce a result that you think it should have produced, tell it that. When you're into ChatGPT or a Gemini, and if it gives you what you believe is the incorrect answer or the wrong answer, tell it it gave you the wrong answer and ask it to redo it. And 9 times out of 10, it will correct itself and get rid of whatever it might have either imagined or gotten incorrect. Transparency, explaining, again, this is where understanding the sources of data surfacing source documents so that you understand how the model arrived at whatever it arrived at. And then finally, hallucinations. Um, overtrain your models. So Microsoft, if you're using any of the Microsoft tools, they generally say, they spec 5 sources of training data as a minimum. Make it 50. Make it far more than is expected. It's only going to help eliminate hallucinations in your model if you're building a custom model for your internal use. I want to spend a minute and talk a little bit about some of the upcoming workshops and webinars from an assured strategy perspective. We've got 3 upcoming workshops. June 24th, there is a scaling up workshop in Atlanta. September 23rd, there is a similar scaling up workshop in New York City. And finally, October 28th, there is a workshop in Seattle. These are intended for organizations that are interested in the methodology, the business platform known as Scaling Up, to help organizations improve their strategy, execution, people, and cash. Finally, we've got a number of webinars coming up similar to this one. Our next scheduled webinar is July the 31st, called Mind the Gap: Where and How are your leadership gaps and how can you close them? We then have a webinar in August on transforming core values. And we have a webinar in September on how to create a culture of thrive. We have a couple of free offers for all of you attending today. Encourage you to go ahead and take your phone and grab either or both of these. One is a business valuation. If you're interested in getting a free valuation of your business, the QR code on the left will take you to a website to allow you to do that. And if you're interested in obtaining a free DISC assessment, DISC Plus assessment for your staff from an organization called Intermetrics, encourage you to click and use the QR code on the right. Again, that will take you to either one of these. There is no charge. They're completely free, simply for attending our webinar today. Finally, some closing thoughts before I open it up for any questions that might exist. First, AI is here to stay. Find where AI is a good fit in your business and start small, start somewhere, right? Focus on solutions that make you and your team's life easier. What applications can I leverage today to bring value to my business? Again, don't just deploy technology or AI because it's new and cool and everybody else is doing it. Do it because it delivers a value to your business. Understand and measure and monitor that value and learn from it. This webinar has only scratched the surface today in terms of how and what AI is all about. Ask yourself how you're preparing your business to adopt AI to remain relevant. From an assured strategy perspective, helping to define AI roadmaps and an AI strategy for your particular organization is something that we can absolutely help with. And if you're interested, I would encourage you to use the QR code at the top. That will give you my contact information, and we'll happily interact with you about setting up an assessment to put together an AI roadmap for your organization. And finally, walk before you run. All right, but be prepared to run. So again, fail fast. There's going to be bumps. There's going to be learning curves. That's to be expected with anything new. So start small, walk, learn from it, but get ready, because those that fail to adopt AI in a meaningful way will be left behind, and their competitors that are leveraging it both to improve their internal operations, but more importantly, to generate differentiated revenue streams, are the ones ultimately that will be successful in the market. If you do have any questions about this presentation now or in the future, please feel free to reach out to me on the email or phone that you see there, as well as via the contact QR code. I will open it up for any questions that anybody has on any of the material here in the remaining 10 or so minutes of our webinar. If you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand. Yep. Becky, I see a question.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks so much. This was really helpful, and I really enjoyed your presentation. So thanks for your time and your insights.
You're welcome.
One of the, I have 2 questions actually, but I want to leave it space for others.
Sure.
My first question is about with so many different generative AI and open AI sources,
Yep.
and with your comment about the fact that they are driven by human, they're ultimately based on human knowledge. Are you finding that certain AI tools perform better for certain industries, for certain types of content, certain types of topics? Like, for example, I'm imagining there are some that have a great wealth of knowledge and are much more accurate for things that are more technical in nature versus something that's a little bit more pop culture related, like Twitter. So I'm just curious what your perspective are and your experiences with different tools for different segments or sectors of the market.
Mhm. Yep. Great question, and you are spot on. They are they are definitely different. And have different strengths. So, for example, Claude, which is uh, one of the popular ones out there, kind of one of the big three or four in the arms race. Claude is fantastic for from a coding and technology perspective. And so it can take and interpret code. It can create code from scratch. It's really, they've seemed to have built a following around kind of the more technical audience. Whereas if you were not that, take OpenAI, take ChatGPT, it can certainly do it, but it's not as robust in terms of its knowledge and its direction as a Claude is, for example. And again, Claude is Anthropic, which has a significant investment from Amazon. Um, from an industry perspective, no, I would say not necessarily industry that, one knows, the building trade industry versus the, XYZ industry better than another. It's more around job functions. So ChatGPT is very good in financial data and financial modeling. Maybe a little bit stronger than some of the other ones there. You're spot on in terms of Grok or X, a little bit more pop culture, news, just simply it doesn't have some of the date limitations that some of the other ones have. Gemini, similarly, they just actually had a massive release in the last 36 hours. And Gemini has come a long way. Gemini used to be a laggard, um, and with obviously Google search being part of its tool set, it has gotten around some of the date limitations that other tools have, and is really going after a lot of the what I characterize the business sector user base. So hope that answers your question. You said you had another one. We've got time, so and I don't see any other hands up at the moment. So fire away your second one.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. Well, it's kind of a parallel question to what I just asked, which is, I think the biggest insight for me today, or just like, little nugget that I'm taking away, is the concept of bias. And I just really
Yeah.
appreciated the example that you shared with
Yep.
the resumes, because it really underscored something that I just haven't necessarily fully thought about. And I'm just curious, what, if anything, are you seeing with these organizations starting to mitigate bias, whether that's racial bias or gender bias or just knowledge bias? And is there any efforts happening in certain areas to try to create a more balanced, or mitigate the balance, or mitigate the bias, I guess, to the best
Yeah.
that you
So
can in human behavior, right?
yep, I know exactly what you're asking, and interesting question, and I think one that will be open for a lot of debate, largely because once you start mitigating bias by people inflicting their perspective on what's quote unquote right or wrong, you're further introducing bias into the equation. So you and I might, ask a model and get, the same result, and you might consider its answer right, and I might consider it wrong. And if I'm one of the ones that's moderating the tool and I go in and correct that, well, now that's in conflict with what you perceive to be the quote unquote right answer. So I think it's an interesting question of how much moderation, because at the end of the day, it's going to be people moderating. Um, will get influenced into these tools. I will say that X and Grok has made an explicit statement that they are not going to do that, that they are not going to moderate, and they'll kind of just let the, let the most popular, the most prevalent kind of rise to the top, so to speak. Whether one approach is right or not, I don't know, but it's definitely something that the industry as a whole is going to have to grapple with and be careful about. Otherwise, you're just introducing censorship into this potentially very complicated world that isn't necessarily visible to the average person. So probably not the answer you're necessarily looking for, but that's the best answer I got right now.
It's a fair answer.
Are there other questions out there in the audience? All right, well, I am not seeing any other hands at the moment. So I guess with that, if there are no other questions, I guess we will wrap up for today. Again, I appreciate the time you have spent learning about this. If there's anything that comes up, questions you have after the fact, please feel to reach out. We will make this slide deck available and the QR codes available to you if you so desire. Just please let us know. And again, thank you very much for attending. Appreciate your time.